The fact that you're using a VPN doesn't necessarily mean that you're trying to hide criminal activity. Unfortunately, some people do try to use VPNs to hide criminal activity or, at minimum, malicious activity. They're trolling on websites. They're just being miscreants and being obnoxious. But for a lot of people, they're trying to use VPNs for purely legitimate reasons. If you're trying to grow your reputation as just become familiar with a particular sector, particular interest, sometimes doing it for free almost works better, because then you're not looking at the ROI of it. You're doing something because you're passionate about it. I'd hate to think that I define my success by whether or not my business is profitable or not profitable. I try to define goals of success by relationships, people that I know, my ability to be able to help people, whether that's with my time or with my money.
And that's next on Bootstrapping Your Dreams show. So, the big question is this: how are ambitious people like us, who don't have a lot of resources, did not go to Ivy League colleges, were not born into wealth, how do we become resourceful enough, use our creativity, our dedication, and a little bit of crazy to bootstrap our way to realizing our dreams? Whether it is launching a new company, launching a new app, or making it to the top of the corporate ladder. That is the question, and this podcast will give you the answers. Hey listeners and viewers, we have created a tremendous community of bootstrappers, entrepreneurs, and professionals who are ambitious, resourceful, and want to get things done. We brainstorm, support, and help each other out. Come join us. Navigate to bootstrapping.group. That is bootstrapping.group. If you like this video, do not forget to hit that like button now. Or if you want us to improve our content, go ahead and hit the thumbs down button and give us your feedback in the comment section below. Here at Tetranoodle, we are passionate about entrepreneurship, technology, and innovation. Every week, we bring you insightful and engaging interviews, tips, tricks, and strategies to help you grow your business or rise in your corporate profession. So if you're new here, please consider subscribing. And do not forget to hit that bell icon so that you are notified when we publish new content. Welcome to this new episode of Bootstrapping Your Dreams show. I'm your host, Manuj Aggarwal, and today we'll be talking with Chris Parker. And I'm so excited to have Chris because I've been using his product for a long time. So Chris is the founder of whatismyipaddress.com, a tech-friendly website attracting a remarkable 6 million unique IP-seeking visitors a month. In the year 2000, Chris created this website as a solution to a seemingly simple problem he faced at the time, which is finding his employer's office IP address. When Chris launched his website initially as a hobby, it attracted thousands of users, and as a result, Chris explored ways to grow it as a side hustle. And I'm sure that many in our audience are users of this website. In 2014, Chris was laid off at his full-time employment, and rather than panic and lose focus, he seized the opportunity to devote himself full-time to his website. Today, whatismyipaddress.com is among the top 3,000 websites in the US. Chris enjoys the fruits of his success, generating close to 7 figures annually and living the dream, traveling the world with his wife. Welcome, Chris.
It's great to be here.
Awesome. So, we went over the story, but let's hear it from you. How did it all happen? How did you put it together? And take us through that journey of phenomenal growth of your website.
Yeah, so the website originally started as actually just a solution to a problem that I was having. It wasn't really thinking of it as a business or even a side hustle when I launched it. It was just a solution to a problem that I didn't think many people had, but it turned out quite a few people did. And I initially launched it on a little Windows NT server box sitting in my home on a 1.5 megabit DSL connection. So
wow.
If anyone has a cell phone, it was faster than that, or it was slower than that.
I remember those days.
Yeah, it's quite funny looking back at it that it was just sitting next to my desk at home for quite a few years. That's all it sat until I started getting alerts saying that the hard drive was almost full on that box. And
Mhm.
how could the hard drive be full? And it turned out to be logs from all the people visiting the website.
Very cool. Very
And I
cool.
was like,
So, for some of the audience who are not technically savvy, can you tell us what this is all about? Why do we need IP addresses? What is the use of this website? So that people who are not in the tech sector, they can get initiated and come to know about your site.
yeah, probably the two analogies that work best for most people is an IP address is kind of like the return address on a postal mail or caller ID when you make a phone call. A little bit less like that, but when you send a message out across the internet, uh, it goes to and from where it's coming from and where it's going to based on the IP address. And in order for the response to come back to you, it needs to know where to go, and that's your IP address. So
Mhm.
every time that you connect with a website, it sees your IP address. Every time you post in a forum, it sees your IP address. You go on Facebook, it sees your IP address in order to facilitate that two-way communication.
Yeah, and now there's been a lot of talk about security, and people are paranoid, and even in these CSI shows, you see, I have tracked the IP address, so I can get you. So tell us a little bit about that. How much of this is reality? How much of this is just fake?
It's funny. There's a certain amount of it in the way that they do it on the criminal the police shows that is
Yeah,
totally not reality.
yeah.
But there's also a portion of it that is potentially surprisingly real. For most people, if you were to visit my website, it will show you exactly what your IP address is, and it will usually be able to come up with 25 miles, 50 kilometers from where you're actually at. Uh,
Mhm.
that's kind of assuming everything is normal. Now, if you are using your cell phone, you're often broadcasting, or as part of that, you're making the GPS coordinates of your cell phone available.
Mhm.
And so you may be unintentionally sharing your actual location within feet or meters of where you really are. As a good example, someone was doing graphics work for me, and he was testing something, and he came back and looked at the website and was like, "Oh wow, it's pointing at my kitchen window."
I see.
So the thing that my site can't tell you is whether that particular IP address is dead on or if it's a dozen miles off, 100 miles off, or 1,000 miles off. Really, the only one who knows really where you're at is your ISP, because they have to maintain the connectivity with you. They're the one who's providing you that internet connection. So they're the ones who know for sure exactly where your service address is.
Yeah, and there are a lot of services out there who are trying to hide your IP address and make you anonymous and things of that nature. So how do those work, and are they useful in hiding your identity?
Yeah, there's a couple of different methodologies for that. Probably the most popular currently is using a VPN service that
Mhm.
basically routes all your internet traffic through your VPN provider, encrypted, meaning anyone who's trying to sniff the traffic along the way can't see what websites you're visiting, they can't see what you're doing, they can't access that data, and it pops out on the internet, on the public internet, wherever that company has a server. So if you wanted to appear like you're in Southern California, you could use one of their servers in Southern California. If you wanted to appear like you were in South America, Israel, you could do things like that. And so those services are usually pay. There are a couple of free services that offer you a very limited bandwidth. And then there's companies that offer you free services with no bandwidth caps. Those are
Mhm.
the services that you actually have to watch out for, because maintaining uh, a robust technical infrastructure potentially costs millions of dollars a year. And if they're not getting the money from you, it's kind of like people talk about Facebook. If you're
Yeah,
not paying for the service, you are the service.
yeah,
And so
exactly.
some of those companies have been found out as sharing all of your surfing behavior, and that's how they're making their money. So
Yeah,
that's the most popular way. Another way that people use these days a lot is Tor, which is good
Mhm.
for web browsing. It's a specific browser that routes your traffic through a number of servers that are all, everybody knows where these servers are, and so your traffic just gets mixed in with hundreds or millions of other people that are using the servers.
Yeah.
generally slow,
Mhm.
and some websites intentionally block traffic from Tor servers just because anytime things are kind of anonymous, it kind of attracts some malicious activity.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's talk about that. So, are these VPN services legal, or can they be? Are they legal first of all?
So it really depends on where you're at. If
Mhm.
you're in the US or Canada like we are, it's not a problem. They're perfectly legitimate services that have good sound reasonings for it. If you're in countries with more restrictive internet policies,
Mhm.
Iraq, North Korea, Turkey, China, Russia, Iran, countries like that, they could range anywhere from being kind of restricted, like you can only use government run VPNs, which kind of defeats the purpose,
Mhm.
uh, or certain VPNs are allowed, varying all the way down to imprisonment if you use them. So if you're in a country where it's illegal or you think it might be illegal, you really need to figure that out and make that decision for yourself, whether or not what you're doing is worth the potential punishment for it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So there's this perception that wrongfully so, that VPN services are closely associated with malicious activity. So that means it's generally depends basically what kind of service you're using, what purpose you're using it for, right?
Yeah, I mean, the fact that you're using a VPN doesn't necessarily mean that you're trying to hide criminal activity. Unfortunately, some people do try to use VPNs to hide criminal activity or at minimum malicious activity. They're trolling on websites. They're just being miscreants and being obnoxious.
Yeah,
But for a lot of people, they're trying to use VPNs for purely legitimate reasons. If you're wanting that extra layer of security to make sure that you're on the mom and pop maintained Wi-Fi network at the local bagel shop. I don't trust that mom's great at maintaining network security. I'm there because I like her bagels. So
yeah,
you might want to use a VPN in a situation like that.
yeah,
There's also people who are trying to access location restricted content, and that's not necessarily I'm trying to get around, you know, government monitoring, but sometimes you have situations where local television stations will stream their station for the local consumers. And
yeah,
that might be your hometown where you grew up and you're not there anymore. You want to watch it, so you might use a VPN. And the same sort of thing could happen with um, professional sports, things like that. And
sure.
then you have the people who just I don't want my ISP knowing what websites I'm on. I don't want my government knowing what websites I'm visiting. I just want that extra layer of privacy on my behavior.
I see. And the most usual one that I hear about is Netflix, because people want to access Netflix content in various countries. So, what is your opinion about that? Is that, like, me being in Canada, a lot of shows are not available to me, which are available in US and vice versa. So, is that something that's legal or not?
Well, legal is a government criminal categorization. So technically, those things aren't illegal, but it is. If you read the terms of service with any of these providers, I'm sure it's not according to the terms of service.
Yeah,
There's
yeah,
definitely been a long running kind of cat and mouse game between Netflix and other streaming services and VPN companies. It's once they identify that's a VPN, they restrict it. The VPN kind of tweaks their technology a little bit, gives new servers, and they can start using the service again. But yeah, that's a very common usage for it. And
yeah,
if I'm a U.S. resident and I have a U.S. Netflix account and I just happen to be overseas,
yeah,
shouldn't
yeah.
I be able to access Netflix?
Mhm. Yeah.
That would be the argument that people would make.
Sure. All right. And now, if I'm not wrong, you also started providing another service to hide your IP address, or something along those lines?
No, we don't actually provide any of the services. Like I said before, it takes a lot of money to maintain those infrastructures. And so
Mhm.
we refer out to companies that we've done research on that we think are reputable in being
Mhm.
able to provide those services, because
Okay.
I don't have the infrastructure to be able to provide them. And it's not the business I want to be in personally.
Sure, sure. Now, let's talk about your business then. So, your website is available for free. I'm assuming there are no paid services. If there are, please let's talk about that. But if there's not, then how do you make money? How do you monetize your website?
Yeah, I have absolutely no pay services on my site that I offer. I've
Mm.
always tried to kind of look at this with, you know, how can I provide a service to people and not charge for it? I like free stuff. That's part of what the internet is about.
Yeah.
But in a sense, there is a cost to it, and that cost is being able for me to be able to put advertising on the site. And so
Mhm.
there's two predominant forms of advertising that I use. One is display advertising, and everyone's familiar with that. Those are the banners for, banner ads for everything from cars to shoes to whatever it is. And there's a variety of really neat technologies these days that track interest. So if you've been surfing looking for a new car, you're going to see lots of ads for cars, and therefore I'm going to make a little bit extra because of that. Or if you've been searching for VPNs and you're on my site, it might those pages written about VPN content might draw ads for VPNs.
Mhm.
And then the other thing that I do is affiliate partnerships. So
Yeah.
with many of the VPN companies that I have on my site, if I get someone to sign up, they pay me a small commission for that, for promoting their services.
Great. And now, obviously, you've been tremendously successful. You launched this as a hobby, and it turned out to be a very successful business. What will you say to some aspiring entrepreneurs who want to replicate your success? Like, are there any niches left today that that can have such a simple sort of implementation, but can grow into something meaningful in a few years?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are. There's always new niches. There's always new technology coming out. There's always new products. There's always new categories of things. Um, for me to suggest one by the time this airs, that won't be a new niche anymore. But it's not like I started this website and I was a millionaire 3 years later. I don't think I made a penny the first, probably first 3 or 4 years. I probably made no money, wasn't even trying to make money. So I
Yeah.
think if it kind of depends on what you're trying to do. If you're trying to grow your reputation as or just become familiar with a particular sector, or particular interest, sometimes doing it for free almost works better because then you're not looking at the ROI of it. You're doing
Yeah.
something because you're passionate about it, you like it, it interests you, and so you're not thinking, well, an ad here or promotion there, because that can sometimes read through to your audience really easy of like, oh, they're just trying to sell me stuff.
Yeah.
And that's always kind of the view that I've taken with my site is I don't want it to read really heavy that I'm constantly pushing products and services on people. That I want to make it, if they're interested in that, it's available and I'm happy to accept a commission from it. But I don't want to be the website that's beating them over the head every 3 seconds with an advertisement for something.
Right. And you were in the corporate segment for a long, long time. Did you have to unlearn any things that you picked up in your corporate job that does not apply to entrepreneurship?
I think it's more that I had to learn I had to learn entrepreneurial skills as opposed to unlearning corporate. In the corporate, you generally don't go to work thinking, how do I keep the company in business? You think more of like, well, how do I just do my job? And at the end of the day, I can go home and not think about what I did all day long.
Yeah.
When you're an entrepreneur, it often is. Uh, I jokingly tell my wife I work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Now, it doesn't mean I'm always sitting in front of my computer, but there's times that I wake up spontaneously at 3 o'clock in the morning, wondering if a hard drive failed
Mhm.
because, well, it's my website and I'm the only one who's going to take care of it. So, you know, I think there are those aspects to being an entrepreneur of more responsibility in terms of the overall outcome. And that can either be daunting and scary, or that for some people that can be very freeing of like, well, I'm in charge of my own destiny now,
Yeah.
as opposed to, gosh, I really don't like the way my boss runs his business, but at least it pays the bills.
Yeah. Yeah. So you don't have any employees?
I have no direct employees. I have a variety of contractors that I work with from around the world. I've got people here in the U.S. that happen to be right down the street from me, and then I also have a couple people in the Philippines and one person in India. And each person has a role that I'm very grateful that they provide. They provide a great service at a rate that if I were having it done here in the U.S., it wouldn't be scalable for me. So
Yeah. Yeah.
it's really
That's
been
great.
neat to be able to provide for people and help them kind of achieve their entrepreneurial dreams where they live, but
Yeah.
also helped me to do the same thing here.
That's great. Yeah, I try to do the same, and it's kind of satisfying to help them out. There are a lot of countries around the world which are not as fortunate as we are here.
Yep.
So it's good to work with them and help them out.
Yeah,
Uh,
and I think that's a great opportunity for people in third world, in countries outside the U.S. and maybe Canada, the U.K. Of, well, what services can I provide at a rate cheaper than someone in the U.S. can provide at the same
yeah,
quality?
yeah,
Because there is a lower cost of living in places in the world, you
yeah,
can get away with charging less per hour and still
yeah,
make a very good living where they are,
exactly.
as well as
And
providing a great service.
yeah, and then there are a lot of other problems. I'm working with a few people in Venezuela, and the political situation over there is horrible.
Yeah.
So they have no jobs. They have very limited resources there. So I try to work with them because it does provide some sort of a help to them
Hmm.
as well. Yeah. All right. Now moving forward. So how did you get this much traffic? Let's talk about that. Like, how did you grow this into such a prominent website over the years?
Yeah. So I think first that I should state the obvious is that when you are one of the first entities in a space, that definitely helps. So um, the site's been around in January of 2020. The site will have been around for 20 years.
Uh,
But I think a lot of it just has to do with my philosophy of trying to provide content that's valuable to the people that are using the site. That am I solving a problem for people? Am I making something easier to understand and producing content around that? And so that's what I've strived to do for many years. Initially, it was responding to emails and then taking those emails and turning them into facts on the website, and then just kind of working my way out from there.
Great. So do you provide like other type of content? Like do you write blog articles and do you implement SEO techniques and all that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't do a whole lot of writing for other websites. For the most part, I'd rather keep my content on my website.
Yeah.
But I've really tried to, when it comes to SEO, really operate with best practices. I've avoided buying links from people. I've avoided, crazy link building campaigns. But just really, I think part of it is just really trying to build engaging content that people
Yeah.
want to link to,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and that it's technically easy for the search engines to understand. Sometimes I remember the days when people were making websites entirely out of Flash. Not that anyone does it anymore, but there was nothing for the search engines to index, so they didn't rank well. And then there's people that, the HTML code is so messy, it's a little more difficult for the search engine to understand, well, did they intentionally close a tag? Did they not close tags? Is this the title of the page, or is this a footer? Because they're trying to do weird kind of, funky things. If you just kind of best practices, keep things clean, I think that has benefited me very well over the years.
That's great. And I think you had a very unfair advantage, which is the name. Like that's exactly what people are looking for when they type it in the search engine. What is my IP address? And your website is generally right at the top.
Yeah, and that is definitely an advantage, but it's also in some sense a disadvantage because with a website of whatismyipaddress.com, not that I'd want to sell cars, I could never sell cars. So because it is such an exact match domain, it's very limited as to what I can do with the domain. And people coming to find out their IP address, they're not coming there necessarily shopping for products and services.
Yeah.
So you really have to look at intent behind what your users are doing. So if
Sure.
I wrote a website about reviews about DSL cameras and everything digital camera wise, and they create the lighting accessories and filters and lenses and cases, well, those people are there because they're in a buying mood. So
Yeah.
those advertisements are going to be much more clicked on. Affiliate links are going to be clicked on and people are going to buy more. So while I might have more traffic than a lot of people, I don't have people coming to my website saying, I want to buy an IP address, because that's just not the way it works.
True enough. But will you recommend new entrepreneurs looking to launch their company to find this type of domain address? Is it even possible anymore?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's always possible, particularly if it's a new niche. If there's a new widget that's come out and it's never been talked about before, you can get widget.com or whatever it is.
Mhm.
You just have to realize the limitations that an exact match domain may have for you in the future. If you want to grow beyond that widget, you might have a hard time doing that.
Sure,
If you're
sure.
there was a company I used to work for called Club Mac, and they sold Macintosh computers
Mhm.
back when Apple didn't sell directly, when they didn't have the Apple Store, and they decided they wanted to expand into selling PCs also. Well, who wants to buy a PC from Club Mac?
Mhm.
It,
Yeah, for
it,
sure.
yeah, I mean, there becomes a branding problem. So you have
Yeah.
to think about, what do you want to do with your brand, or what are the possibilities for your brand 5, 10, 15 years down the line? If your website's a smashing success, but it's only in this one little vertical, you may limit yourself by having an exact match domain. Not to say that you shouldn't do it, but there is definitely a cost associated with it.
Yeah. All right. Now, let's talk about your journey. Along the way, did you make any mistakes? Because it seems like you had a very, very smooth growth period and still growing. So, did you run into any problems? Did you make any mistakes?
Yeah, I think I've run into a number of problems that I'm happy to share about, because I think it's my mistakes will hopefully not be someone else's mistakes, and
Mm,
some of it has to do with kind of the age of the internet. While my website was growing, is for too many years I ran the website out of my house.
I see.
Um, I had multiple internet connections coming into my home office. I had a half rack server, and because of that kind of infrastructure, I was prone towards denial of service attacks, technical issues. And part of that I was okay with, because to me, at this point, it was just a side hustle. It was fun. I like the technical aspects of the hardware behind running websites and stuff like that. And that's not so much what people do anymore. People
Mm,
aren't running their own DNS servers, their own link balancers, and techie things like that. They're just, I've got an AWS instance somewhere that they don't even know about. It's just there. So having that physical technology that I had to deal with and move to a co-location facility wasn't um, a scalable thing. And so because of that, because I knew I had technical issues with the physical infrastructure, I worked really hard to build a very streamlined um, back end for the website. So the entire website was all hand coded. Every single page was hand coded. There was no CMS. There was no WordPress element to it. There was none of that available, or there's none of that. Not that those things weren't available at the time, but because those things are relatively database intensive, and it was sitting on a machine in my home, I went away from those kind of setups and went to hand coded.
mm,
Many years later, now that I'm trying to bring on writers and people to do work for me, well, I'm still in the position where someone wants to make a spelling correction. They've got to send me an email. I've got to go into the box, get onto that box, change that file, save it, make sure there's a backup of it. And so it's really, in terms of being able to produce content and grow the site, it's really become a thorn in my side, which is,
I see.
as we're talking right now, had to hire a team of people to migrate portions of my site to a CMS that will allow other people on my team to actually be able to work on it, so that it's not all falling on me. So I
Yeah.
think that's kind of one of the lessons that I wish I had learned earlier. Is it's that kind of that forward looking again, is, what do you do when your business scales?
Yeah. Yeah.
Are your processes scalable? Have you documented what you're doing such that you can hand it off for someone else to do it? Or is it even possible for someone else to do it?
Mhm.
And you need to think about those things before you have to do it. Otherwise, it takes away from running your business when you actually have to do your business.
Yeah, and you brought up cloud computing, which has been exploding in adoption. So, will you recommend that people go with the cloud infrastructure as they are launching their new websites, their new products, or should they consider their own hosted facilities?
It kind of really depends on what you're trying to do. I think you need to at least look at those options. Some of the cloud services can be, depending on your website, can be prohibitively expensive.
Mhm.
That's something that I've had to deal with in terms of like, can I go to a cloud computing platform?
Mhm.
Um, I get somewhere in the neighborhood of, oh gosh, I think the number is 100 million requests to my website in like a 72-hour period of time.
Mhm.
Like 99% of that are not human users. It's malware that people have written, script kiddies, all sorts of weird stuff. So if I were to take my site and try to just drop it on an AWS instance, the infrastructure costs, the per request costs would just would blow up my bank account really quickly.
I see. I
So
see.
I've had to work, but it really depends. I mean, most people are not going to be in that situation. So something like putting on AWS or Azure for many people is probably a very good solution.
Yeah, yeah. All right. And how has this success changed you? Like, are you still as driven? How's your mindset changed over the years now that you have had this success?
I think one of the things that has been a mind shift for me is really starting to think about how can I facilitate other people's goals and dreams.
Right.
Not that not that I don't want to have more in savings or something like that, but
Mhm.
I'm trying not. I don't want my success being like, well, how much do I have,
Yeah, yeah.
but rather how much can I help other people.
That's
And so I think it's been exciting being able to starting to work with contractors and bring people on in various parts of the world. To me has been a really exciting thing. And my wife and I look about like, well, in what ways can hey, what more could we give to charity if the business does better? And rather than kind of line our own pockets of how can we help out those around us, we're taken care of, we're happy, we don't need more. How can we help other people? So that's kind of been our mindset. And
that's great.
I consider myself extremely fortunate to be able to be in that position.
That's great. That's unusual in this world for sure. So thanks a lot for doing that. And now, what about habits? Like, what kind of habits have you developed, and did they contribute in your success?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that kind of I laugh at is throughout my life, I've tried to read business books. I've bought a number of business books and never really been able to put them into practice. I've tried um, kind of productivity books over the years, and it just hasn't worked. But in
Mhm.
the last couple of years, I've really been able to start using methodologies like GTT, getting things done, I think it's by
Yeah, yeah,
David Allen,
yeah.
and trying to keep myself from being distracted by, oh gosh, what was that? Document it, get it out of my head.
Mhm.
One of the things I recently did is I have no social media on my devices. I still post to social media through applications to do that, but I don't get I don't get notification when there's tweets. I don't get friend requests, and I think that's really helped me to be able to settle down and be able to have larger blocks of my time where I can be focused on, okay, I'm writing content. Okay, I'm coming up with a 5-day challenge for privacy and security. And it gives me these larger blocks of time to be more effective at it, is what I do, rather than, oh, wait, there's an email. Oh, wait, there's a tweet. Oh,
Yeah.
and getting distracted by all these things. I think that kind of thing has really helped me. Starting to use project management platforms like Trello to be able to move things along, trying to think about how can I be, like we talked about before, outsourcing tasks that I'm either not good at
Yeah.
or don't want to do to people that are good at it, and I can do it for less than my time.
Awesome. That's great. And will you consider yourself a success, or your success in the making?
I think I consider myself a success independent of what the business is. I I'd hate to think that I define my success by whether or not my business is profitable or not profitable.
Mhm.
I try to define goals of success by relationships, people that I know, my ability to be able to help people, whether that's with my time or with my money. Um, I definitely feel that the website has helped facilitate that, but I would hate to think that like, well, like with anything on the internet, if Google changes the algorithm, I could lose significant portion of my traffic overnight. Does
Mhm.
that make me no longer a success? And so I don't really want to tie my success to financial things that I don't necessarily have a control over, but more of how am I contributing to the lives of the people around me. So in that sense, yeah, I feel like I'm a
Awesome.
success.
Awesome. That's great. And what are your plans for the future now?
Well, I'm really excited, like being able to get portions of the site on a CMS and to be able to really start growing content, providing more content. We've got some great plans for kind of like programs for people to go through at no cost to, here's 20 things that you can do to harden your own security that are achievable by anybody. You don't need to be a geek. You don't need to have a technical background, but just simple practical things that people can do to make sure that they're got their best practices in place.
Awesome. That's great. Well, thank you so much for being with us today and sharing your story and educating us about IP addresses and a whole bunch of other things. Now, before I let you go, can you tell us how people can reach out to you?
Yeah, obviously people can go to whatismyipaddress.com, but if someone wants to reach out to me directly, they can go to my personal website, cgparker.com, and I talk about kind of some of the behind the scenes there, as well as any of the social media platforms that you can find me on.
Awesome. Great. Well, once again, thanks for being with us and sharing your story.
Great. Thank you very much. Had a great time.
And that's all for now. Until next time. And if you're an existing or an aspiring tech entrepreneur, then I invite you to check out my new online workshop, Bootstrapping Your Tech Startup Dreams. Go to bootstraptechstartup.com and sign up for free. I want to make sure that more successful and sound decisions are made every day in your tech projects. Let's start finding solutions to your problems. So go to bootstraptechstartup.com and I look forward to helping you with your tech projects. If you want more engaging videos and insightful interviews with industry's thought leaders, then check out other videos we have picked for you. The link is right there. And if you want to be notified about our new content, please do consider subscribing to our channel.